Now the fun begins.
Budget.
Stop! You violated the law.
What's good, everybody, and welcome to the bonus accessory Game Pass Gamecast. I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms, and as always, joining me today are my two co-hosts, starting with Adam, Marshy Marsh. Adam, what is going on, and what have you been playing?
Hey, not too much, Travis. Lately, I've just been really dug into Fire Emblem Three Houses on the Nintendo Switch.
Nice. How have you been liking it so far?
I'm loving it. It's basically the best blend of a tactical RPG and like a life sim style game that I've ever played. I feel like I'm only like halfway into the story too, and I've definitely put a good 20 hours in at the very least.
Oh, nice. So explain to me, my knowledge on Fire Emblem is very light. So just kind of run through, but I hear a lot of this one is, I don't want to say more welcoming for new users, but it seems to be a good jumping off point for people who aren't necessarily familiar with Fire Emblem, as it seems more, at least from my perspective, it seems to be have more like RPG mechanics, and instead of it still seems to have the tactical aspects, but not as over the top.
Yeah, so like the tactical battles are really just one feature of this game, and they're still the main focus as a Fire Emblem game, but it's just kind of one piece of the tapestry. So in any Fire Emblem game, the story is going to be different, the setting is different, the characters are different. Each game is kind of self-contained, but they do share some loose continuity or like similar themes. What's really welcoming about Three Houses is that, it encourages the casual mode play where like if you lose a unit in battle, they don't die forever. And I would recommend that to anyone who's playing Fire Emblem in 2019. Like, don't bother playing Classic Mode, because you're just going to load your save if one of your characters dies.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it is permadeath.
Classic Mode and the older Fire Emblem games by default are all permadeath.
Cool. Anything else you've been playing, or you just mostly been sucked in on that?
It's mostly this, and occasionally I'll boot up the old Mario Maker and put out a new level, but that's becoming more and more infrequent.
Yeah, it's starting to take the backseat, which is understandable. I've kind of been the same way with it. Other things have popped up, but it's always old reliable that you can just pop back in anytime if you want to bust out a couple levels. But let's kick it over to our other host, the one, the only, Mike P-Pack Toy Soldier. Mike, I really feel like I don't have to ask you what you're playing, because I know exactly what you're going to tell me, but I want to ask how you're doing. Because we're one of my best friends. Adam's one of my best friends. I want to know how you're doing first and foremost. Then you can dive into MCC and the grind that you've been on for UGC.
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Just sick of driving to Oakland all the time, but other than that, we're in a good shape. I'm feeling pretty good today.
You're talking my language there. Sitting in traffic every day in the city, and working downtown does suck. It sucks big time.
I mean, Oakland's not even downtown, but with all the back to school stuff going on now, it's pretty bad. So
yeah. So, but with that being said, how is everything going with the grind and the preparation for the Halo Classic at UGC Atlantic City?
Yeah, so it's going well. We finally solidified a fourth that we feel pretty confident in. So we got our team of four back. We ran scrims all night last night. I think fired up at 8 p.m. and wrapped up right at about midnight. So got a lot of grind in there, but moreover, on my stream recently, I've been playing a hard playthrough of Ninja Gaiden Black.
Ooh.
So we're getting through that. Right now I'm on Alma 1, and it's a little bit challenging, but not too challenging. The biggest problem with Ninja Gaiden Hard and the harder difficulties is the lack of resources and the increased cost of everything. So everything costs more through the shop. So it's really hard to have a lot of resources to fight these battles. Like, I need more Ki, I need more Nimpo, I need more Elixirs of the Devil's Way, and they're really expensive, and I can't afford them. So fighting Alma is a little bit more difficult when your go-to strategy in speedruns is to kind of do this juggle move where you jump up and you do a flying swallow. So you hit A and X at the same time, and then you hit Y, and you do a flying swallow, which is like a dash attack. And if you hit her, you'll knock her down. And then you do this combo where you hit X, Y, X, X. And then as you're coming down, you already start holding in the Nimpo, so you hit her with a Inferno Fireball, and it like stuns her again, and you can just loop her like that a bunch of times. So it's easier to do when obviously you have a lot more key and nimpo, but in this situation where I'm running without it and it's a lot more difficult. But besides Halo, just trying to get through a hard playthrough of Ninja Gaiden Black and working on some of my strategies of the speedrun on a harder difficulty where the bosses are surrounded by minions, so it makes you kind of be more polished and more technical, and it's going to help me in the long run.
Oh, for sure, man. And we got a lot of good feedback from, Reddit and a couple of different places on the Ninja Gaiden Black episode. We got some good feedback. A lot of people really like the technical talk. A lot of longtime players were like, hey, I don't really think like that. I'm not thinking in a speedrun aspect and the technical inside strategies that you're using. So we got a lot of good feedback on it. Part of me would like to revisit that series, maybe doing where we can go down and kind of have you check in on your hard playthrough or things that you've kind of picked up or strategies you've kind of changed throughout the course of your playthrough, just to kind of gauge where you're at with it. But
absolutely, yeah, no problem. We can do that.
That episode's gotten a lot of good traction, and we got a lot of good feedback on it, so I'm sure we will definitely revisit that game eventually again, because it seems to be a fan favorite, so...
Not only that, but hopefully Ninja Gaiden 2 is on Game Pass soon, so we can cover that game too, because it's worth it.
Knocking on wood here, so that would definitely be nice.
I think that's also a fan favorite pick.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
On my end, at least, the big one recently, at least the past weekend, I took the game I kind of picked up and played over the weekend that I wanted to hold off a little bit longer, but I knew it's that itch that I always talk about. I knew it'd scratch it what I wanted. And that's Doom 2016. I replayed through that. I'm trying to think. I started it maybe Thursday, something like that. It's a really quick game. It's only maybe 8 or 9 hours long at the very, very most. But I ran through that again. The only time I beat it was on the Switch, which took me much longer because that thing is a bitch to play on in handheld and, in a non-traditional way. But played it on Xbox One X on Game Pass. That game is just so fucking awesome. It's a game that once you hear the screeching metal dubstep techno hit and you see all these fucking demons pop up and you're just ripping and tearing through stuff, it's so satisfying. I think the combat shotgun in that game is the most satisfying weapon I've ever used in a first-person shooter. At least from a campaign's perspective. It just feels so tight and it feels so good that it's I keep saying it's one of the sleeper hits of this generation. I'm so excited for Doom Eternal, and I wanted to actually push off replaying that closer to when Doom Eternal drops, so everything's kind of fresh with my playthrough, but it's a quick game. If I really want to play through it again, I could, and it was one of those things that once I wrapped on it, I was like, do I want to do a nightmare playthrough? Like right now, I kind of do. But I ended up kind of touching on our game this week again, Fallout 3, I kind of went back and just kind of got reacquainted with that. But outside of that, like Adam said, a little bit of Mario Maker.
Nice.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. But transitioning into the show, a couple housekeeping notes before we get into the main bulk of our show. Just a reminder, our YouTube channel has changed names. It's changed from Bonus Accessory to Game Pass Gamecast. Some of the feedback I got from a few people led me to believe that may help you, the listener, find our content a little bit easier on that platform. But everybody who is already subscribed to that previous channel is automatically subscribed to the Game Pass channel. So that is Game Pass, 2-word, Gamecast 1. All you gotta do is search that on YouTube, pop it right up, and get to listening. So, with that being said, we got new Games with Gold announced today. It's been nice. The past couple times we've recorded, everything has gone smoothly with stuff that's getting announced, either coming to Game Pass, Games with Gold, yada yada. It's perfectly aligned with when we're about to record, so everything's worked out good. It's actually some good games this month. Gears of War 4, which is available all month for free, and then also Forza Motorsport 6, not 7, but 6, and that's available August 16th through September 15th. So those are the two Xbox One exclusive games that you're getting. And then on the Xbox 360 side, which both games are backwards compatible, so you can't play them on Xbox One, we got Torchlight from August 1st to the 15th, and then Castlevania Lords of Shadow from August 16th to the 31st, which I actually kind of want to go back and play. I've never really jumped into the Castlevania series too often, but I like Metroidvanias, so I do want to check them out and maybe dabble in them. But outside of that, yeah, is there anything on that list that kind of interests you guys?
I mean,
Gears, obviously, but
yeah. Outside of that, we're talking about, Forza. That's
Forza here.
It's Forza. I would get into. I would download Forza. I would not pay for Forza.
Agreed.
Even though it's Forza in America, it's Forza out there. All you Yankees. I guess we're the Yankees. All you blokes from England. But I'll play some Forza.
And that's the thing with Horizon, the newest one, being on Game Pass, most traditionally with a Forza game, and racing games in general outside of the Mario Kart and things like that, I usually don't jump on too often. Burnout, I think, was the last series I really got my teeth into.
Ooh, what a game.
Fuck yeah, dude. Burnout. Which one was the one, not Paradise, what's the one before it? Not 3.
Takedown or Revenge?
Revenge.
That was
Takedown, then Revenge.
That was the last one that was on OG Xbox, right?
I think so,
Revenge.
Yeah, that one was great.
And that's like, I don't know, it's really not just like a garden variety racing game. It's got way more going on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it has the time attack, which is like something you're looking for. It has the races, which is something everyone's looking for. It has that crash mode where you just try to rack up the most damage. Very fun. And
yeah, I think crash mode, like the racing game deathmatch, that, not like other games have, other kart racing games or racing-ish games have deathmatchy modes like the battle mode in Mario Kart, or I guess Twisted Metal as a game in its entirety. It's more of like an arena, but like a racing deathmatch sounds really fun. And man, I don't think anything since Burnout has done it.
No, and that's... Unfortunately, Burnout is not on this list, but that kind of seems to be a hole. And Forza, the Horizon series, is at least starting to kind of fill that arcadey-esque, less serious simulation hole that is in the racing genre, if you want to call it, because it's not necessarily racing, but it is, like, it just because it involves cars, I guess you could put it in. But I personally think that that's one of those areas, kind of like we were talking about in our Ninja Gaiden Black episode, where we said there's a hole for this kind of genre, or this kind of game, that it may be a niche hole, but it's very open and it could definitely be filled. And I think a lot of people would really enjoy having a series like Burnout come back. And I know that there was an indie studio that put out a Burnout clone almost, and I mean that no disrespect, but a game very much similar to Burnout recently. I can't remember what it is called. It came out on Steam, and I think it was coming to Switch and Xbox One. It was either Xbox One or PS4. It wasn't both, if I remember correctly. But you could see those kind of popping up, but because EA did make Burnout, correct? Or they published it, I mean.
Yes.
Yes, they did. Criterion developed, EA published.
Okay.
Right.
It's one of those things that I know they re-released Burnout Paradise, and I think they just uprised it, not too much different with it, but that's one of those series that if EA is looking for some goodwill, that's another one of those series you kind of bring back. That's one of those series that I guarantee it's not going to take a ridiculous amount of R&D to get something like that out the door, an arcade-esque crash simulator, something like that that's on a small scale to get out and even be a $30, $40 entry price for digital-only game. I think that's something that could easily be done and give them some goodwill. But
that indie successor you mentioned, is it Dangerous Driving?
Yes, that is it. Dangerous Driving. So it's at least somewhat, it's in a similar genre of that. It is filling somewhat of a hole, but it's one of those games that when I first came out, I heard good things about it, and then it just kind of disappeared. And if I remember correctly, at launch it didn't have multiplayer, which hurt it a lot.
Yeah.
So, but I think since then they have patched it in, but like I said, I haven't really kept up with it. But it's something that, a hole that I would like to see filled. But
that's the other games coming on Gold. I'm in agreement with Mike. I've probably played Gears. Might play Forza. Torchlight, Castlevania, not really interested. 3D Castlevania has always been hit or miss, and Torchlight is, well, I could just play Diablo, I think.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, and I think that's what made me think of that, seeing Lords of Shadow pop out. Earlier today, I was thinking about this game, and it popped into my mind. You guys got, like, demo discs back in the day. I'm talking, like, PC demo discs, the Pizza Hut ones even, too, that Nakey Jakey talks about. Yeah, I remember that I got, from my cousin or somebody, an Eidos demo disc. It had Tomb Raider. It had a couple of the Tomb Raider games on there, like an early demo of it. But it had this game that it's one of those games that I'm like, did I just make that up? Or was I literally just thinking of like Diablo or something? Mm-hmm. But I was like, no, it has to. I spent like 20 minutes while I was eating my lunch at work today. And I was like, this fucking game has to exist. So I'm digging through. I finally find a picture. It's like a fucking 480p JPEG that's on like a 4:3 aspect ratio on Google Images. And I dug up of the disc, not even of the game, of the disc. And it's the guy, I'm like, I knew I didn't make that up. So it's this game called Revenant, okay? It's basically a Diablo clone. And I remember it being, imagine Diablo 2, similar in terms of like the class systems and things like that, except for it had full 3D, but an isometric view. I think it came out in like 1999 or something like that. So it could be possible to do that. Granted, Blizzard went a different direction with it whenever they released Diablo 2, but it's one of those games that like, did I just make that up being like a dumb kid, like thinking I played that, but really I was just playing like fucking Diablo or something like that? But it's funny you just say that I was just thinking about it earlier. Yeah, looks like a really bad game. Not Castlevania, the game that I was talking about, because I don't think they went anywhere with it. So, with that being said, I think it's time we jump into our game of the week this week. And ladies and gentlemen, that of course is Fallout 3.
War never changes.
War never does change. This is still, I consider, the golden age of Fallout. When we're talking Fallout 3, where really, just to kind of start it off, I think that Fallout 3 is probably one of the best cases of the perfect mix of casual and hardcore RPG action adventure mixed together. It still had the hardcore aspects to it that fans liked in terms of character customization, stat building, skill-based, things like that you could still very much customize the character, both physically and through attributes. But it also wasn't overbearing in the sense that my cousin who doesn't play games, I couldn't just hand him a controller and him start playing. He'd be like, oh, this game was much different than that, where it wasn't necessarily super overbearing. But, I
tend to agree. I think it was pretty casual friendly. It had depth to it if you were interested in that, and I know Mike can definitely attest to this, but like, if you're not the type of person who, I don't know, combs over every inch of a ruined building and goes out of his way to hack the terminals to unlock doors, but then also pick the locks on the doors to get the most experience, that kind of thing, you could still enjoy the game, and you could play through the main quest line and do some goofy stuff on the side, and you'd have a great time. But, there's also a lot of depth for those of us who like to take the long haul perk so we can fast travel with every item in every location so we can sell it for more caps than we'll ever be able to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. Bethesda and their games really over time they've really caused me to play all games in general at a much slower pace because of their games that I love so much. I comb every fucking room in every game before I leave now because I think there's some little either collectible or item or gold or whatever, and I'm not even playing a game the gold's in. But going into it, run through the game. If you aren't familiar, it was first released on October 28th, 2008 on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Windows. And while it was the third entry in the storied Fallout franchise, or now storied, I should say, it was the first mainline entry since the IP was purchased by Bethesda from Interplay Entertainment, and really kind of was a big transitional period for that franchise, going from the traditional isometric view a la Diablo dungeon crawler feel to it to a first/third-person perspective that we're really looking at. And that kind of falls into the vein of wanting the game to still hone in on those traits that it had in the two original mainline entries, such as non-linear gameplay and nice narrative and dark humor. Dark humor is what this series is really one of its staples.
Yeah, it was definitely among a crop of FPS RPGs in the late 2000s. I think you saw a lot of those types of games at that time. You had BioShock. I think BioShock was 2007. Borderlands was also around that time. Stalker was a little bit more obscure, but it was there.
Yeah. It was definitely kind of all over the place in terms of it fell right into kind of that mold, but at the same time, it was a much, much deeper experience comparative to a lot of the others that you listed. Nothing wrong with any of those experiences, but this was truly an RPG experience that you were playing whenever you got
into definitely.
it. But the game was in development for I think it started in like 2004, something like that. Now, granted, the principal dev didn't start until post Oblivion, but with both titles using the Gamebryo engine, that kind of did help kind of boost development along, I'm sure, with it. But the game is set within a post-apocalyptic world that encompasses a scaled-down version of Washington, D.C., the surrounding areas of it. It's set in 2277, which is actually 30 years after the events of Fallout 2, but is not connected. So, players, when they jump into this game, you're taking over a inhabitant of Vault 101, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, isn't it one of the only vaults that was not opened at the time?
That's right. So every vault was different. They all had different social experiments that were kind of like underpinning their design. 101 was one of the longest to stay closed, and I think that was part of the experiment.
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely got the feel of that. Even just kind of jumping right back into it a few days ago, just to kind of get my feet wet with the game again after not playing it for so long. It's one of those games like riding a bike. You're like, I haven't done this, but it just feels so natural jumping back into it. I kind of forgot about the introduction to this game of so many different aspects of it, but one being, I'm used to Fallout 4 in the sense of, and we'll touch on that, I'm sure, soon whenever we do a Fallout 4 episode, since that's on Game Pass, and that, I'm sure, will be very divisive. But I was so accustomed to that narrative, stepping into this one where you've never left the vault. Nobody's left Vault 101, and this shroud of mystery that was around what was going on, and, your father dying in the beginning, or supposedly, or somebody trying to take his life, and the Overseer kind of going crazy and attacking everybody, and then just being thrown into the Capital Wasteland right off the bat. I think this is one of the best setups in an RPG, at least a modern RPG in a while.
And what a fabulous setup for Bethesda bringing in their audience over from Oblivion, who were probably, first time playing Fallout 3, was totally unfamiliar with the source material in like the Interplay library.
Oh, same here, 100%.
You're directly in the shoes of the player character who has no idea what's going out in the wasteland. You don't know any of the lore about the world. You know, like a little bit about how the apocalypse happened. I think they explain that a bit in like the opening cutscenes with the War Never Changes. So it's a good way to kind of get you aligned, like player and avatar.
Right. Yeah, and I think like Adam and Travis, you guys have both kind of touched on Oblivion, and I feel like they took basically everything good from Oblivion and just built upon it with this game in particular. I felt like it felt the most like Oblivion. I mean, New Vegas felt a lot like Oblivion also, but Fallout 3 and Oblivion to me were like the two games that were so spectacular from Bethesda, and that like at this point in time, they're on the rise. I loved Morrowind. I loved Oblivion. I played Fallout 3 and I loved it. I was like, wow, Bethesda can do no wrong. Like, they could have literally dropped the game tomorrow and I would have known nothing about it, and I would have went out and spent $60 immediately on it at this point in time. You know what I mean? They were just blowing everything out of the water. They were doing everything right. They were doing everything right. Like, they did no wrong at this point in time.
I agree. The game ended up winning multiple Game of the Year awards or nominations for it. It was, at that point, their most financially successful game. I believe it got around, like, I was reading a stat of it today. Oblivion did, I think it was like 520,000 units in its first month, and Fallout 3 did 610 or something in its first 2 weeks, or something like crazy. Like, because of, I'm sure that whole audience and that whole player base, who I'm sure half of them were traditional Bethesda Elder Scrolls fans, and half of them were, this is like a showcase game on these new next-gen consoles, who jumped into Oblivion, loved it. Another game that, personally is one of my favorite games of all time, but one game that won multiple Game of the Year awards and was, like I said, a showcase piece of the new technology at the time. We're like, oh shit, this is from the same people? Oh, easy, like Mike was saying, that no-brainer, I'm buying that. So, it resulted in some crazy sales. But yeah, Fallout 3 already going into it, no matter what we kind of come down on with these topical questions, and at the end of the show, doing our traditional cash it, pass it, asset segment. Whatever we decide on that, I think we can all agree this is definitely one of those games that were a definitive experience last gen, and were really a benchmark for, at the time at least, action RPGs, between accessibility and pleasing that hardcore fan base. I feel pretty confident saying that. Correct me if I'm wrong by all means.
I definitely agree with you. I think that the only good thing that Fallout 4 did was the shooting mechanics were pretty solid in that game. Outside of that, I mean, it was met with pretty mixed reviews. I myself played it for about 37 hours the first week it came out. Kind of dropped it from there and haven't touched it since. I do really enjoy Fallout 3. The shooting mechanics are a little wonky because, I mean, it's kind of the first time Bethesda really dipped their toes in that type of scenario of like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do the shooting mechanics? But they did a really good job with the VAT system. You know, you just press right bumper and you can choose the targets that you want to shoot at. It kind of made it cool. Like, even though I liked shooting things myself, it was kind of funny to VATS people because you could like aim at their head and go into slow mode. You'd pop their head like a watermelon and a sledgehammer. Like, that kind of stuff was cool. And that was the first time that had ever been done up to my knowledge. So even though they weren't familiar with the shooting mechanics and things of that nature, I thought they did a really good job with it.
It's actually a really funny story how they implemented guns in that game. So the bullets, you can see the tracers pretty easily while you're shooting almost any gun in Fallout 3. And I think, I'm not sure about this, but I've heard and read on the internet that basically they just took the like magic projectiles, like you know how you would shoot a fireball in Oblivion?
Mm-hmm.
Each bullet out of your gun in Fallout is basically like a small spell, like a small ranged spell in the same, you know, Gamebryo base engine as in Oblivion. And, you know, the collision works the same, damage dealing works the same. Obviously, there's more stuff on top of it for limb damage. But yeah, basically, you're just shooting tons of mini fireballs all the time, as you would in Oblivion.
Holy shit, I never knew that. That's actually really interesting.
Yep, and obviously Melee would have been the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, jumping into our topical questions, I want to open it up with this. Is Butch the biggest fucking jabroni in gaming history?
Yes, next question.
In all seriousness, he was a good indication of how you wanted to base your character in terms of its morale. Because you're given multiple options right off the bat. Whenever he was in his room, when you're trying to escape and leave the vault for the first time, you're given the option to save his mom and do this and that. But it's a good moral compass because you can, if he's being a dick and you're in a bad mood that day that you're playing, you can just fucking kill him at one point. Like, and that's one of the allure to Bethesda games. They give you so much freedom to, especially in this era of Bethesda, they give you so much freedom to do things like that and make these moral judgments. But
I think, like, the Butch situation in the vault is kind of their introduction into the karma system because in Oblivion and in their previous Elder Scrolls installments, there was no karma system. It didn't really matter how you behaved inside of that world. You could gain infamy, but like it didn't actually change anything. But this was the first time that they kind of rolled out this situation where based on your karma, you could get special perks. And I think that it was a really good way for them to kind of introduce that, hey, by the way, while you're out in this wasteland, every choice you make is going to have a consequence. And it might not be bad right now, but it could open up different avenues for you that you didn't know were going to be there. Because you could play through with a really good karma, get special perks that really benefit those types of people. And it's mainly going to be personality based. But then if you go the other direction with the negative karma, you could instill fear in NPCs and you could do things of that nature, get special attacks that only bad karma type of people could have. And I thought that they did a really good job while making a hateable character like Butch. You could choose to take the high road and be an adult about it or just be a better person, and you would gain karma for it, like when you saved his mom. You could just say, you know, screw you, Butch, you're screwed, and lose karma. And it kind of set this precedent that right off the bat, everything you do is going to be watched, and it's also going to follow you. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. I totally. But anyways, Butch, he is an asshole. I think we can all agree on that, but I just wanted to throw that in there. Just kind of.
That's funny because he is.
Butch may be a jabroni, but tunnel snakes rule.
The fucking tunnel snakes.
He's no Dukov.
I'll be honest.
We'll get to him.
I'll be honest. Back closer to when this game first came out, I remember I was playing. It was either my second or third playthrough that I did on it. It was when you do save his mom. He gives you the tunnel snakes jacket. I wore that, I think, for like 50% of the game, just to be an asshole. Like, I was getting shit on because it's a tunnel snakes jacket. What's it gonna do? You know, it doesn't really help too much. But for like 50% of the game, I just walked around with it. I'd have literally every other piece of armor on that would be beneficial, except for chest because I'm wearing the goddamn Tunnel Snakes jacket.
Why wouldn't you?
Just to be a hard ass and be like, Butch ain't,
greaser.
yeah, Butch ain't dead, but he live on. Alright, so, jumping into it, we'll get into some serious topics here. Let's start with Adam on this one. So, it's 2008, and like Mike was saying, in many players' eyes, Bethesda could really do no wrong in this time. Fallout 3 really played a big part of that. It brought back more of those traditional RPG mechanics and customization that Oblivion not completely moved away from, but did make a little more casual to bring more fans in and more new players. But it still, at the same time, didn't shake away that strong narrative that Oblivion is known for. So I want to ask you, do you think Fallout 3 will be the last true, and I really use this term loosely because it is kind of up for debate on how you want to consider this term, but hardcore RPG Bethesda game studio release, given their current trend of the last two releases of their tentpole series?
I think it's a pretty complicated question. I'm going to say there's a chance that it will not be the last one, and I'll back that up with a little bit of evidence. So what I notice in modern Bethesda games and the way they move away from hardcore RPG mechanics is that I'll define hardcore RPG as being a game in which you make decisions about who your character is. And those decisions are meaningful in some way. Where they move away from that, they started to with Oblivion, like you said, only in a kind of a minor way, where your starting stats were your decision, like what class you were and everything. Your major skills, you leveled those up and it increased your overall level. Your minor skills, they would never contribute, I don't think. So you had that. But in Oblivion, you could level up any of your skills just by practicing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to, you could finish being the sword-wielding melee fighter that you wanted to be once you maxed out all your levels there. You could then move on to the other skills, and it wouldn't really, cost you anything. You wouldn't have to take away from your melee character. It was kind of like, you can do everything, just not all at once. And I think the same also goes for Fallout 4. That's a game where, you can pick any perk you want as long as you have a high enough special stat for it, and you can raise a special stat with a perk point. So that's another game where you can kind of do and be whatever you want to be. It's just a matter of in what order. Fallout 3 still had open skills. You tagged 3 skills in the beginning, but you would finish the game and hit the level cap well before you could actually max out more than 3, maybe 4 of those stats. And you also couldn't increase all of your special stats to 10 very easily. Perks were very strong in Fallout 3 and also in New Vegas. So there were actual choices you were making. A lot of them were just skill increases, but some of them gave you special abilities like the Mr. Sandman, where you could assassinate someone who was sleeping, or I said Black Widow and Lady Killer, where you get special dialogue options with the opposite sex. So those are choices you're making about your character that are irreversible. And the reason I think Fallout 3 might not be the last one that Bethesda will make is that they have, now that I think of it, I might be wrong all along. Because in 76, I don't know if you guys have played it, but they have those perk cards that you load out with. I think those are reversible as well. You can change your perk loadout at any time. So yeah, maybe it will be the last one. I think Bethesda's priority is not on making a hardcore RPG experience anymore. They're on mass appeal and following trends with the introduction of a battle royale, which they're 5 years late to the Battle Royale game.
Yeah,
76.
just a little bit. But with them bringing in a brand new IP, their first one since Elder Scrolls, with Starfield, do you think that may be the door opening to bring a traditional RPG back into their fold with a new IP that they could say, here are our 2 crazy, well-known IP in Elder Scrolls and Fallout. You know what we're doing with those now. You love it or you hate it, that's fine, but obviously a lot of people love it because they sell like crazy still. But for our long-term fans who like a more traditional experience, here's Starfield. Here is a new IP that we're trying something new with, or should I say something old, but going back to a formula that we, used at one point, to kind of cover all their bases, do you think that's ridiculously outlandish to think?
It's a possibility, but I wouldn't count on it because when they made Oblivion, they followed it up with Fallout 3, and they said, hey, here's that game that we did 4 years ago that sold really well. This is mostly the same game, but it has a different aesthetic, let's say. Mm-hmm. And there's some other things under the hood that are different too. But for the most part, I think Oblivion and Fallout 3 are two different flavors of the same kind of core gameplay loop. I don't know, in 2019, 2020, whenever Starfield is supposed to start having announcements and stuff, I don't know anything about a release date, but when we start seeing stuff about this game, like news, I don't think Bethesda is going to not go the route of, hey, here's a new game with a new aesthetic. It's going to be the same as our most recent very successful titles, just a little different, No, there's a possibility, and I hold out hope. Honestly, I would rather them apply the retro formula to their existing IPs and carry on the casual into the new, because, you have a bigger base of people who have history with Elder Scrolls and with Fallout that would rather see the traditional experience return to those. That's just me, though. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, we have had this conversation behind closed doors without microphones on. And I mean, I'm a junkie for basically Oblivion and Fallout 3 in New Vegas. I just like those games. I keep going back to no matter how long it's been or whatever I'm playing. Like I can always fall back on those games and get fun out of them because I enjoy them so much. I think that I'm probably one of the. I mean, I can't say I'm the only person because I feel like everybody in this realm. We briefly touched on it with the IPs and how they're intertwined or whatever. But I think I'm one of those other only people out there that's a Bethesda fan, but I'm like way more of an Elder Scrolls fan than I am a Fallout fan. And I know that there's people that are like on the other side of the spectrum, but at the same time,
we'll get into that aspect. I have a question about that coming up, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I still respect Bethesda from just like a consumer point of view to the point where even though I'm not that big of a fan of the Fallout series, just because like Fallout 3 was really good, but after that I kind of got disappointed that they were just like making Fallout after Fallout after Fallout, that I wanted more Elder Scrolls. Then they give me Skyrim, and it's like such a dumbed down version of the game that it's like, oh my god, I don't even want to play this. And then it's like, guess what? Another Fallout! And it's like, okay, I get it. Like, you made us an Elder Scrolls, but it wasn't that good, and you guys know it. But, it's sold wildly. A lot of people have enjoyed it, but I feel like Adam will side with me. And we'll talk about this more because we're eventually going to have to do Oblivion, and we'll talk about it more in that episode. But Adam will agree with me that both he and I enjoyed Oblivion and Morrowind far more than we did Skyrim. And I think that both me and Adam would be, I'm fairly confident in speaking for Adam, and he can echo this, that we both enjoyed New Vegas and 3 far more than Fallout 4.
That is a hard agree.
So it seems like the further they get away from these classic games, me and Adam enjoy it less, but it seems like the casual fan enjoys it more. So there's winners and losers every time a developer like this is kind of twisting the game and trying to introduce new things, and it seems like me and Adam in this case have been the losers, and I'm just hoping that with Elder Scrolls 6 maybe we'll be the winners again at that point in time and enjoy it more.
Moving along, I'm going to throw this one out to you guys. So, like Adam was kind of touching on at one point earlier, many fans of Bethesda games are split between the two main franchises, Elder Scrolls and Fallout. There seems to be this, I like Fallout, but I love Elder Scrolls. Or, I like Elder Scrolls, it's good, but man, I love Fallout. You rarely see, at least in my experience, somebody who's right in the middle of just, I love both of them, or, both are alright, but for two series that share such similar genetic structure, why do you think that the community is so split between the two? Do you think having two IPs that are so beloved, that are so closely intertwined between the two, will hurt them in the long run, or has hurt them?
They definitely have that same surface level. It sounds contradictory. On the surface, they look the same because the core gameplay loop, if you get really reductive about it, is the same. But there are other things about each game that kind of set them apart, and it's about their themes and about their goals, or like what the point of the game is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in Elder Scrolls, your goal or your fantasy or whatever is to be this like really powerful force of nature and to take part in kind of this like grand prophecy style narrative. The player character is pretty much always at the center of the story in an Elder Scrolls game. In Morrowind, you're kind of this like uncertain prophesied hero. Like no one's really sure if you are the Nerevarine or not. Even to the end of the game, it's like maybe he is, maybe he's just lucky he was in the right place at the right time. Oblivion, I don't think you're actually prophesied to be a hero in Oblivion, but you definitely like single-handedly end the Oblivion crisis and end the succession struggle and bring Martin to the throne. Whatever.
I believe in Oblivion you are seen in the Emperor's dream.
That's right.
You're prophesized, but I don't think you're the hero.
It's not like a larger cultural prophecy. It's just like you're like one specific actor.
You're a cog in the bigger machine, but you're an integral cog. But you're not the cog. You're not where Martin is he is the centerpiece. Like he is to an extent. But that's Oblivion. We'll get down that road eventually.
Yeah, I would argue maybe Martin is more of a figurehead. Like the hero of Kvatch does a lot of the heavy lifting.
True.
And then in Skyrim, you're the Dovahkiin, and you're also the one who ends the rebellion one way or the other. So an Elder Scrolls game is pretty much always centered on the player character being narratively the most important person in the universe. Fallout, on the other hand, it's similar. You're still an integral part of the story, and you tip the balance more often than not. But what you see more often there is you pick a side in a factional struggle, and you pick what group is going to win, and you almost pick like what ideology is going to win out in the Wasteland. So you could take Fallout 3, for example. You've got, I don't know, I guess you've got Project Purity on one side and the Enclave on the other. I don't know, can you even side with the Enclave in Fallout 3?
I really don't think so. I think they're just kind of like always an antagonistic group to you. You can they'll be cool with you depending on your karma standing, but I can't remember for sure, but I don't think you can really get in with them until Fallout New Vegas. I think they saved that for New Vegas as part of like that story, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's that, but there's like the Brotherhood of Steel faction that you can gain reputation with. I think there's like the Slavers in Paradise Falls you gain reputation with. So there's ideologies that are represented by these groups that you can contribute to or fight against. And the same is definitely true in New Vegas, and in that much for sure. You've got NCR, who's like this expansionist, imperialist kind of echo of the United States. You've got Caesar's Legion, which is this very regressive authoritarian regime that's like, yeah, there's order and law, but it's brutal. You've kind of got other factions like off to the side. Everyone's kind of like placing side bets in that game. And then in Fallout 4, you've got the Brotherhood, the Underground, and the Institute, who are kind of the big three. I guess the Minutemen are in there too, but like, you're either a Minuteman through and through, or you as the Minuteman general just kind of like play as a puppet to one of the other three groups. And again, those are all about ideology. Whether you think synths are people, whether you think synths should be like controlled, or whether you think they should be set free, or just outright exterminated if you're with the Brotherhood. So in those games, the thematic purpose of role-playing is different. Let me look at the rest of the question here. I've got the show notes in front of me. If they're so closely intertwined, will it hurt them in the long run? I don't think so. I think they differentiate from each other enough, and if there's any benefit to having them share technical DNA, like that'll be a boon to Bethesda. Like if they can use the same common assets or engine or whatever, that can only help the development cycle.
No, I agree. I think they are far enough apart, but have, like you were saying, similar. There is a similar structure to it, that initial gameplay loop and that pull. You will have that between the two, and it does to that aspect. You do see the similarities, but I think they are far enough apart thematically and aesthetically, especially.
Yeah, there's definitely the dichotomy of like medieval fantasy versus sci-fi as well.
And I mean, I've always sided on, if I had gun to my head, I'm picking Elder Scrolls every time. But that doesn't mean I don't like Fallout. I am very much a poster child of this question. I like Fallout, but it's always will be second fiddle to the Elder Scrolls, just because my personal taste, I grew up on Zelda. I grew up on games that I played Chivalry at one point. I loved Warcraft. So it's that medieval, especially, maybe that's why I love Oblivion so much, that European fantasy feel of it that I've always been drawn to. But that's not to say, once again, I do like Fallout a lot. But I do think they're far enough apart. What do you think, Mike?
I think that the situation between the two IPs is this. I fell in love with Morrowind, and then Oblivion came out, and I loved Oblivion, and it was an amazing game. Fallout 3 came out, and I was like, you know what? That's fair. I'll play this Fallout. They wanted to do something a little different. That's cool. And I really enjoyed Fallout 3, and it was great because it was a lot like Oblivion. Then Fallout New Vegas comes out, and I'm starting to think to myself, I'm like, you know what? It's fair. We got 2 Elder Scrolls. We got Morrowind, and we got Oblivion, and now the Fallout universe got 2. It's Elder Scrolls' turn, right? And then no, and it was like they came out with Skyrim, and I was like, okay, I'm respecting the fact that they're coming out with Skyrim. Let's play this game. And I just felt like it was just not a well-done game at all. And then it seemed like they were so quick to move on to their next project. And that's really what developers do, is they move on to the next project after the last one's done, especially with the RPG realm. But I just feel like it's kind of had this situation where it's kind of pitted the two parties against each other, unbeknownst to Bethesda, or maybe they know, but it wasn't their original intention with the two against each other. But in terms of like quality games, like we got Morrowind, which was like great, and it was an older gen, like 2 gens ago, obviously. Then we got Oblivion, which was on the new gen, but it was so far back. And then we kind of got these 2 games in between, and then we got Skyrim, which was at the other end of the gen. And then Fallout comes out, and kind of felt like, as an Elder Scrolls fan, you kind of got ripped off with Skyrim, especially if you're a hardcore Elder Scrolls fan. You felt like you kind of got ripped off with Skyrim, and then they were just moving on to Fallout 4, and you're like, wait a minute, like what the fuck is going on here, right? And, like, I just don't feel like Bethesda willingly and knowingly wanted to pit the two against each other, but they did because the games they developed and how they developed them and what came out kind of naturally built this animosity towards each other. And it's not like I hate people who love Fallout and want to buy the Fallout games, because I buy the Fallout games.
Hell yeah.
But like, I want more Elder Scrolls than I do Fallout. If it was like 2 or 3 to 1 Elder Scrolls to Fallout, that would be perfect for me. And I know there's people on the other side of the aisle who are like, wow, if they made 3 Fallouts in a row and then 1 Elder Scrolls, that would be plenty. You know what I mean? So right. I don't think there's a winning for Bethesda with both IPs. I think they just keep making games that both fans buy them, because it's like, what else am I going to buy from the RPG landscape? And, you know, Bethesda's winning at the end of the day. But, I mean, that's my 2 cents on that situation.
No, and I agree. But at least you're kind of seeing that with their structure now. Bethesda Game Studios, their internal, straight from Bethesda dev team, they've expanded now to multiple studios. So we're eventually now going to see, especially with Starfield on the horizon, then Elder Scrolls 6. I'm sure there is another mainline Fallout game mixed in there somewhere within their plans. Having more of these studios, at least you would hope, help balance out the workload of that to hopefully give more balance back to their fans of, hey, I like Fallout, but I don't want to wait through 2 Elder Scrolls games, or, you know, vice versa. So I think you are starting to see at least the internal structure of that kind of make way into it to hopefully change that trajectory, to hopefully see a balance for both franchises. But kind of piggybacking off that question a little bit, to me, one of the strongest aspects of Fallout 3, especially compared to Fallout 4, Fallout 3's narrative was awesome. At least for an open world RPG action adventure game where usually the main draw is living in these worlds. What about Fallout 3's narrative do you love so much that kind of draws you back into that game time after time? Not just right now, but when it first came out, because I was one of those people who I beat the game, and then as a kid, you're like, I want to, I beat something. Okay, I want to get back to playing Halo or whatever, and I'd start playing Halo, but then I'd be like, I kind of want more Fallout, and I'd just start it up again and make a new character. It was because I loved playing through that experience and specifically that narrative. So what about the narrative to you guys kind of draws you back into it?
Adam, I feel like you are always the first one to cannonball back into the Fallout universe, so why don't you take this one?
Oh my god, yeah.
He is the poster child for. Oh, I love Fallout. I like Elder Scrolls, but fuck, do I love Fallout?
He goes back to the old crack pipe.
Drugs.
Man, when it comes to Fallout, I feel like there's such a satisfying progression to me. There's that feeling of starting off from nothing and scavenging through, just trying to find the bare necessities. And you start completing a couple quests and meeting some important characters. You start getting some really good gear. And then you're able to take on more powerful enemies, and that cycle continues. And it's something that's, honestly, it's in every Bethesda game. In Fallout, it's really strong for me personally because that progression of power ties in with the progression of the narrative. So you start from very kind of a self-focused or self-centered narrative conceit, which is, I need to find my dad in Fallout 3. You go from that to... Daddy?
Next door,
From
jackass.
eyes bleary, just looking into the sun, because, you've never been outside, you don't know you're not supposed to look into the sun. You go from that, walking to the nearest town and asking if anyone has seen your dad, to realizing just how big the world is out here and all the conflict that's embroiled.
And also realizing, is that a fucking live warhead that's just in the middle of your goddamn town? What the hell are you people doing?
And then they're just like bathing in the water and just like laying in it like, yes.
Let me purify myself in the waters of fucking Lake Atom Bomb.
Megaton.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild, and the world gets weirder and wider the longer you play. And I feel like it coincides really well with the power curve of the game, of your character, because you're getting stronger weapons as you go deeper into the DC ruins, and you're starting to see more powerful enemies. You're getting pitted up against more powerful and organized factions like the Enclave. It just feels really good to me every time. And another reason I keep coming back, it's kind of unrelated to narrative. I feel like there's always new stuff for me going back to Fallout, stuff that either I didn't notice or even attempt to look for on previous playthroughs. Even if that's like, doing a different karma run or running with a different faction. Or it could just be stuff that like I've played 100 times, but on the 101st time, I see it in a new way because I'm playing it with new eyes. I'm a little older. I have perspective from other experiences. It's like, I don't know. I used to read books a lot more, and there would be books where, like, every time you read it, you kind of learn something a little bit different, or you see it in a different way. Fallout has deep potential for that for me in kind of the same way.
You always hear me talking about, especially on the show, I'll come back to games that I play 20 minutes of when I first get in, I'm like, no, this ain't doing it, Chief. But then I'll come back to it with a different perspective, and I'll just be like, holy fuck, why did I wait this long to play this goddamn game?
Right.
You
just played Fallout through again, Fallout 4, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Said that it was like, it grabbed you in a way that it didn't the first time you played it.
Right, yeah, and maybe it was because, and I tend to side more with Mike on, like I said, my experiences and being more drawn to that feeling that I get from more of a Oblivion Fallout 3 basis compared to the Fallout 4 structure. But the first time I played Fallout 4, I got like 2 hours into it, and I'm like, it's just not what I was looking for. I respected it, but it's just not what I was looking for. But then recently going through and actually playing it for the first time, I was like, I know I should at least like this game. And I'm not usually one of those people to be like, oh, I have to force myself to play this game. Like, if I don't like the game, I don't play it. As all of us, we're adults now who work full-time or have jobs, school commitments, that it's like, our free time is very finite, and I don't want to spend that playing something I don't like. I'll spend it playing video games because I fucking love video games, and I will until they lower me into the cold, hard earth. But it's one of those things that I was like, I want to give this another try because I'm looking at it from a different perspective, and maybe it's my expectations were lower, but I don't think. It was more of I think the experiences I've had and things that I've played in video games have set me up more for this game now.
There's so many factors that go into how you feel about a game when you first approach it, and like, I know you kind of glossed over this as like maybe it wasn't quite the reason, but I think there's so much pressure to enjoy a big like landmark release like Fallout 4 on release. And I know I sat down with it, I bought it, and I played a ton of it as soon as it came out. Mm-hmm. But like you said, when you're a busy adult, it can feel even more cathartic to say, you know what, that big popular thing that just came out, I'm not going to bother with it. It's like a weight off your shoulders because you don't have to participate in the the kind of ever-present cultural event that's going.
That is me with The Witcher 3 to a T. I can't tell you how many times I've played that game, and each time I try picking it up again to play it, because, once again, it's like European medieval fantasy. I should love it, and it's a big open world, but I've picked it up multiple times to play it, and each time I get a little bit farther. I think the most recent time I tried playing it, I put like 12 hours into it, 10 hours into it. So I'm making progress, but it doesn't click. And then finally I'm like, I'm not enjoying it right now. Like, this isn't what I want. I'm not going to play it. It does feel cathartic, where it's like, you know what? I'm cool. I respect it, but I'm cool. I may need to find another game that fits this mold that is right here, but this one isn't doing it right now. So,
yeah. Since it's on Xbox Game Pass, I downloaded it and I played it a little bit because on my PC it would just crash like constantly, right? It would never work for me on my PC. So now that it's back on Xbox, I would definitely get it back into it. The situations with like just all the quests and the different things you can do in the Fallout 3 universe is just so good. The karma system's perfect. The leveling feels right. I mean, everything about Fallout 3 kind of feels like Oblivion to me. And when I talk about those two games in the same sentence, it just means everything's right. Mm-hmm. And that's why I would come back to Fallout 3, because it just feels right. When you load it up, if you've never played it, you're listening to this podcast and you get game recommendations from us, I got some news for you. We haven't told you this before. Most of these beginning episodes are games that are fucking good, and we want to do them because we love these games.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So if we're doing this game at this point in time, chances are we love it, or at least one of us loves it, and we want you to love it. Mm-hmm. So if you can go into this game with an open mind, I know people have recommended Oblivion, and they're like, I can't play that shit, it's too dated. Well, it's like, okay, but like, can you not just enjoy a game for the way it is? Can you not just like put that bias aside and just play the game? And I know I've had biases about games, and I've been biased, and I felt certain ways about games that I shouldn't have, but this is a game that if you come to me and you're like, it's dated, I don't like it, I'm going to be like, okay, well, you just don't like good games. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
PS3 make the best games.
Exactly. If you don't like this game, and if you don't like Oblivion, you just don't like good games, and that's okay, but I don't take your opinions on games anymore, and it's that
You're
simple.
entitled to your wrong opinion.
That's right. And from now on, when you share your opinion, it's fucking wrong.
You know where you stand with that person.
Yeah. How do you really feel, dude?
I just like... If you're out there and you're one of my friends and you don't like these games, don't share with me because I'll stop listening to you on everything.
Turn the hearing aid off.
We're gonna get drunk while I listen to you.
Exactly. Like, let's be honest. Like, for those listeners out there that are listening to this game that do love Fallout 3, and if you love Fallout 3, there's probably a pretty good chance you love Oblivion, and you're gonna feel the same way I feel. I'm not the only one here. I'm not in a vacuum, and I'm not by myself. Other people feel the same way, so I'm not afraid to let it hang all out there.
No, absolutely.
I feel like I was just struck a moment of clarity about something about Fallout 3 and Oblivion, how they relate. There's definitely a camp of people, and I have visited and spent time in this camp, where they think Bethesda Fallout is no good because it does nothing similar to the way the original Interplay Fallout was done. The spirit of the two series are so disconnected. And to a point, I agree with that. And I'm okay with that being the truth. But I also really like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Fallout 4 is okay. 76, I didn't play too much. But when you look at kind of the wacky, sort of disjointed world that Fallout 3 presents, I mean, it was an open world that felt not that cohesive. Like, there wasn't a lot going on that covered large areas, and different locations didn't feel connected to each other that much. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it through the lens of Oblivion, a Western fantasy medieval RPG where there are so many ridiculous, hilarious side quests. And I feel like for me, if I were to go back to Oblivion, that's definitely the draw, is to play those ridiculous side quests. Mm-hmm. They felt like an evening of D&D where your dungeon master was just like padding for time. He was putting in filler episodes, and he's like, all right, what can I come up with this week? And it's got to be some new, crazy, wacky, conceited like scheme, and you know there's always a twist at the end. Every Oblivion side quest has that twist.
Yep.
And when you think of Fallout 3 through the lens of a studio that had just created Oblivion, it makes a lot of sense. What would be wacky to put in this wasteland? Oh, how about a town full of nothing but children under 16, and then once you turn 16, you get banished to this other settlement, and it sucks. Or, like, the Republic of Dave, which is, like, an autonomous country, like, less than a quarter-mile square, just consisting of one guy and his family. So, I don't know. It's definitely not Fallout as it was, but, like, that's okay to me.
You're right, absolutely.
And I think what it is still pretty entertaining, especially when you think about how close it is to Oblivion in the way that it approaches side quests.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of moving into our next question, because you kind of touched on the point there between the two, Oblivion and Fallout 3, but with Fallout 3, even dating back to Interplay's Fallout, dark humor, this sense of kind of twisted humor.
Laughing at the gallows.
Yeah, it's always been a staple within that specific franchise. Like, 100% it's found in every single Fallout game, no matter what. Do you think that Fallout 3 kind of paved the way for bringing that sense of humor to mainstream video games on a broad scale? Because, sure, you have your GTAs, you have games of that nature, but they're all based in satire, where Fallout's more a joke in itself in terms of, like you were saying, the Republic of Dave, or they're worshipping a nuclear bomb that's in the middle of their town, and shit like that, where, like, GTA was more just a play on itself in terms of it's parodying real life. And that's the humor of it. It's more wacky than dark humor, I guess, what I'm saying. So, do you think, like, Fallout 3 really kind of brought that finally to a mainstream scale of video game audiences?
I'll start off with this one, and I'll kind of lob it up to Adam, and that way he can kind of slam dunk it home. You know what I mean? Because I feel like we both have very strong opinions on this. I feel like this is a situation where they were able to use the universe of Fallout to their benefit to be able to share their dark, like, humor. Because let's face it, it's a nuclear apocalypse, man. Like, they could kind of get edgy with it, and it fits. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, one thing that comes to mind is whenever you would plant frag grenades into people's pants and blow them up, and you would get the achievement Psychotic Prankster. Like, right there, like, you could literally pickpocket someone and place a live grenade in their pants. They would, like, look around and be like, help! And pat their legs and just get blown to smithereens. And, like, you just laugh about it because it's a game, right?
Right.
But this is one of the only universes where it just feels right. As fucked up as it is, it just feels right to place a live grenade in someone's pants in the post-apocalyptic world. And I mean, I definitely think dark humor is like in Fallout more so than any other game. It just fits.
I definitely agree. So, like, you mentioned GTA, Travis. It definitely riffs more on, like, modern living, and it kind of does so in sort of a, I don't know, I think it's a little bit lowbrow, kind of crass, and there's a place for that.
It's slapsticky. I mean,
yeah, it's very slapsticky. It's very, like, kind of in your face.
It's a parody on real life, but at such a dumbed down level. And I don't mean that any offense to those games, because obviously, look at they sell like gangbusters, and they win awards because they're well crafted games at the end of the day.
It's very entertaining.
Right.
I just think the flavor of dark humor is different in Fallout, where it's like it is kind of edgy, but you can't help but laugh at situations like, oh, Jeannie Mae Crawford, why don't you come over to the dino statue and put on this beret for me? I guess the player puts on that beret. That's in Fallout New Vegas, but it's close enough that you get my meaning.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, just like the ridiculous side quest I was talking about earlier. It's not very biting commentary on any real world type of thing. If you think about it, it does have some political commentary, and at the base of it, Fallout is kind of like anti-nuclear war. At any rate, about introducing it into mainstream video games on a broad scale. I can't think of anything else that has the same kind of dark humor as Fallout 3. There are definitely other flavors of it out there, but it's kind of singular in itself. It's pulpy. That's what I wanted to go for. It's like parodying the fiction of the past. It's not even really a parody of real life in any type of way.
No, absolutely not.
It's riffing on like old 50s retro futurism and sort of that like Gilded Age. But yeah, I don't think there's really anything else like it. And I think you see more of that now.
Yeah, I agree. You're starting to slowly see it over the past console generation kind of slip in, and that quote-unquote edginess that you're finding in some games, and the dialogue and settings and different things like that you're starting to see people become more at home with it. And it might be because the generation that was open to those South Park jokes and the things like that, the dead grandma jokes or whatever, they're now making games. So
Yeah.
it's starting to become the norm, but I definitely, personally, I think they really paved the way for that. Or at least they were the first one they threw the first stone. And they broke the window.
And I feel like other attempts might take themselves a little bit too seriously. But I feel like Fallout has always been pretty self-aware.
Yeah, absolutely. So, moving into our last topic, though, I do want to touch on, because it is kind of, I don't want to say a staple feature, and I'm using feature in a very, very satiric way. One of the biggest criticisms that Bethesda's games receive is the issues they have with their engines, ranging from glitches in the world, with the player, dialogue mishaps, you name it, quest freezing and being botched. Yet, look at this episode that we talked about. I mean, we're still talking about how we still love the worlds that they create and the worlds that we live in, and even the games that we don't necessarily like the most, like Mike was saying, he still spent dozens of hours in. And didn't blink an eye at the time because he's still playing and finds some kind of enjoyment. You're still finding ways to immerse yourself in these games. Do you think the technical issues that Fallout 3 had, because it was in that time where it's on Gamebryo and it is an engine that kind of is, even in 2008, kind of held together with, some gum and toothpicks to an extent. Do you think the issues that it faces technically, do you think that takes away from the immersion level and overall experience of the game, or do you just think people are overcritical at times?
This is a super tough one, man.
Oh, we're getting meta, baby. Just shoot from the hip, man.
I mean, it's just like,
in general, and this is just, I guess I should say in general with Bethesda games, or any game. I mean, any game that, these open world games, it's like a staple that you see. Hell, even playing through Assassin's Creed Odyssey a couple months ago, or at least starting to play through it, it's such a huge game that there's so much going on underneath the hood that little things do happen. Clipping happens, and models just disappearing, or you run into, even playing Phantom Pain, I went to kill the last person who was in the base, and he was in T-pose. It just happens. Like it just happens sometimes, but do you think that ruins an immersion level of a game such as Fallout 3 that we're obviously giving all these accolades to at the same time?
I found a glitch in Oblivion where if you open a door, and it depends, like in the sewers it happens a lot, but if you open a door, and as you open it, you move behind it and start jumping really fast.
Mm-hmm.
As that door shuts, sometimes you can get no-clipped into the wall and kind of fall under the map, and you'll just be under the map. That's it. You're out of the map. You're screwed. If you haven't saved lately, you lost all your progress because there's no getting out.
Yeah.
You're gone. And that kind of this example of game breaking kind of comes to mind, where it's you kind of feel in a way that's if you understood the amount of coding that goes into making a game like this, which I think all three of us understand, we kind of are familiar with how hard it would be to do this.
Absolutely.
I think that from a casual point of view, it might be Jesus, why can't this game just work? But at the same time, do you think about it from a technical standpoint? It's well, how much is going on in this game at one point in time that, oh God, one thing broke on you. Load the game and suck it up, Buttercup. I always laughed when things like that would happen. When there were glitches and stuff, it would just make me laugh. I didn't know how else to react. And it's just, I'm sure the people that made the game have found out about this little particular glitch at this point in time, and they've also had the same reaction where they're are you kidding me? You know what I mean? That kind of thing happens, where I don't really necessarily hold it against it. Now, the Fallout 76 bullshit that was going on, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But just little glitches and mishaps that happen in these types of games are commonplace, and they're not something that I really get tilted about. It's not that big of a deal to me.
Right.
Slow the game and go forward. Now, if the game continuously breaks over and over again, and that save is doomed, that sucks, and that would be a bitch, and that would be hard to swallow. But those are few and far between. And while they do happen, and I'm not saying that like it's never happened before,
Right.
like that would be an issue, but by and large, you know what I mean? It's not something that is the case. It's just something small, and all the stars aligned to make this glitch happen. That you should be happy that you get to see it, because you could be the only person that ever sees that one glitch, because everything had to click at once to make it happen. You know?
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on it as a programmer?
I tend to agree, especially with your sentiment about, like, you never know how many moving pieces have to come together to create your one unique little experience.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of like, that's almost like a hallmark of Bethesda games. I know it's such a meme at this point, but it must be said that the kinds of bugs that tend to plague Bethesda games, more often than not, are minor and humorous enough that they're tolerable. Obviously, if you're having troubles with like crash to desktops all the time, or your save files are being corrupted, or you're like clipping through the world and falling out consistently, stuff that like prevents you from moving on from a bug and enjoying the game as intended, that's really a problem. And I think that's the type of thing that plagued Fallout 76 more than the other types of bugs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just the shooting and the moving around in that game was really sticky.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at the glitches that happened in Fallout 3 and New Vegas and Oblivion, in that whole era,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reason it became such a meme. Like, everyone had an experience with it, but it wasn't enough that anyone really, like, stopped playing, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know, maybe there are people out there who are listening who are like, well, I crashed to desktop the entire time I tried to play this game, and I never got to enjoy it. Fuck Bethesda. I feel for you. I'm sorry. And I really hope that Bethesda does do better about bugs in the future. Like, that type of thing deserves to be resolved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they deserve to have a reputation for, at that time, until Fallout 76, I should say, I don't think they deserved a reputation for shipping broken games. There's way more enjoyment to be had than frustration. And I think, yeah, it does break some of the immersion, but it kind of creates a unique experience on its own. And as long as you're approaching those games with that in mind, that like, it could break at any time, be careful, make sure you save often, I think it's okay. People tend to be overcritical. I agree with Mike.
Yeah, and I do too. It's one of those things that, like Mike was saying, if you didn't save at a certain point and your game crashes, or that becomes apparent every 5 minutes or something, yes, it's a broken game. That is something to be very critical about, and you would hope a Q&A tester actually fucking saw that at some point during Q&A. You would just hope. You would just really hope that no game would ever get past that point, but, I mean, some have. But I do agree. People are overcritical at times with it. Usually, most of the time, it's very minor glitches that you see, and you're just like, oh, okay, alright, and you move on. People should, in my opinion, enjoy the meat of the game. Enjoy what the game actually is. Don't focus on, look at the broader picture. Don't focus on the minute details that are trying to pull you away from the experience. Unless they are escalate into something much bigger, but I agree. They tend to be a little overcritical, especially with some of Bethesda's games. And that's just also the culture we're in right now, where sometimes one thing gets put on the internet and it snowballs. That it's just the piling on effect that you do see. But
yeah, I would say it's more constructive to obviously note any bugs you come across.
Right.
But if there's a system that's like working as intended,
mm-hmm.
as the designers intended, but it's not working for you, or you think it's terrible, the system is like unusable in its intended state, that's something that's more worthy of criticism.
I do agree. I think people are just overcritical at times and like to pile on with some of the things going on. But
any expert in media criticism will kind of tell you that you have to meet a work where it is,
mm-hmm.
and sort of like assess what it is attempting to do more so than what you think it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. So, moving in to one of our final segments, we're coming back to the one, the only Gamecast Casino. Mike P-Pack's favorite, the degenerate gambler. I know he loved it.
Woo! I got my ass kicked last time. I mean, I didn't get my ass kicked, but it was a tough L. I took the L on the chin, and I'm ready to bring it back.
So,
we'll see how it goes this time.
If you are familiar with Gamecast Casino, it's a segment that we do that it's sort of a revision of Blackjack, a play on it, where me, the host, will throw up a statement with a quantity attached to it. And my two co-hosts will either say hit or stay to see how close they can get before going over. Whoever wins each round will get a point. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. If we somehow have a tiebreaker, I do have a ace in the hole question, the winner take all. So, but just imagine a game of blackjack where you're at the table and you got to get as close to 21 as possible if you can without going over. Whoever is the closest will win a point. So, we got 5 questions on the board. We're going to dive right into it with question 1. Contestants, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So, in Fallout 3, there are 12 unique endings to the game. And that's excluding DLC or anything like that. We're talking vanilla Fallout 3. There are 12 unique endings. I'm going to start with last week's champion, Adam. I want you to tell me, are you hitting or are you staying? And if you are hitting, what are you going to?
I'm going to hit and say it's 14.
14, final answer?
That's my final answer.
All right, Mike, what are we looking at here?
Oh, God. I'm going to say... Let's go...
We're using the honor system because we're recording remotely, so...
I'm not Price is Righting Adam by going 1 up. I'm hitting and going 1 under. I'm going 13.
13.
13.
All right.
Final answer.
Final answer. All right. So, in Fallout 3, there are 26 unique endings.
What?
Whoa!
26 unique video endings. Cutscene endings that you can get. 26. So Adam gets the point. You played yourself, Mike.
I bunted, but Mike just struck out.
Jesus Christ.
What a pathetic effort. I blow.
So Adam is on the board. Moving into question 2 here. Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Yep. There are 90 unique weapons within Fallout 3. We're going with Mike this time.
You would, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna stay. I think there's I don't know that that's the exact number, but it's pretty damn close. And I don't even know, I couldn't even guess. So I'm staying right there at 90.
Staying right there at 90. Final answer.
Final answer.
All right, Adam, what are we looking at?
I think it's more than that, but I'm afraid of undershooting it and having Mike be closer than me, because we both undershot it last time. I'm gonna say there's 125 unique weapons.
125, so you're hitting and going to 125.
That's my final answer.
Final answer. All right. In Fallout 3, there are 163 unique weapons.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
What is
163.
happening right now?
Trust me, I counted them today. I counted them.
Bro, you are habibing me with these low-ass expectations.
So Adam gets another point. Adam, my God, on fire.
I
He
can't
is
feel
on
too
fire.
proud about this, though.
Yeah, true. I'll be honest. That one was... I was kind of... That was one of the last questions I was looking for, and that was kind of a tricky one. But at the same time, I don't regret it. So, y'all should have done your homework. You know Gamecast Casino is coming on. So...
I didn't think the questions were going to be this hard.
How it goes in the second half.
I don't want to hear it. I'm just kidding. Anyways, question 3. We moving along. Adam is up 2-0 right now. Question 3. While searching the wasteland in Fallout 3, players can find 12 Vault Boy bobbleheads scattered around the world that will provide a bonus to your character's attributes.
I'm gonna stay on 12.
Oh, you little bastard.
You gonna stay on 12?
Yep.
Alright. Mike, what are we looking at here?
I'm getting absolutely dominated. I know the goddamn answer is 12, but I have to hit and go one more. I have to go 13. 13 final answer, but I know it's 12, but I gotta take a chance in case it's not.
13, final answer.
Yes.
Alright. While searching the wasteland in Fallout 3, players can find 20 Vault Boy bobbleheads. Mike is on the board.
Sneaking back into it, baby.
See, there's like, how many special attributes are there?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
There's like one for each of those, and then what else? I didn't think it could be that many.
There for sure are 20. I checked.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I forgot there was one for like every skill too.
You should have done your homework, Adam.
All right, eggs
You
on
can't-
my face now.
The house always wins, my friend. The house always wins. Alright, moving into question 4. Adam is still up 2-1 to Mike. Question 4. At the beginning of Fallout 3, your character can choose from 6 skills to specialize in. Adam won last time, we're going with Mike. Mike, you staying or hitting? And if you're hitting, what are you going to?
Hit 9. Final answer.
You're hitting and going to 9.
Wait. I'm trying to formulate the question. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Absolutely.
Host. Game show host. Wayne
Absolutely.
Brady.
I mean, does Wayne Brady have to choke a bitch? At the beginning of Fallout 3, your character can choose from 6 skills to specialize.
No.
Okay, good enough.
11. Hit 11.
Hit 11. Final answer.
Yeah. Final answer.
Alright, Adam, what are we looking at?
Hit 10.
Ooh.
Hit 10. Alright, final answer.
Final answer.
Alright. At the beginning of Fallout 3, your character can choose from 13 skills to specialize in.
Mike's got it. Tie game.
The comeback is on. Don't call it a comeback. He's been there for years. Well, Mike has battled back, and we go into our final question on the Gamecast Casino. Gentlemen, it's been a fair and honest battle. A battle of wits. Of nerd shit.
My favorite kind of battle.
Absolutely. Question 5. In the base game of Fallout 3, so vanilla Fallout, what you picked up on October 28, 2008. In the base game of Fallout 3, there are 7 different factions, both joinable and non-joinable. Adam, going to you. Do you want to stay, hit, and if you do hit, what do you want to go to?
I'm gonna hit and say that there are 9 joinable or non-joinable factions.
Final answer.
Final answer.
Alright. Mike, what are we doing? This is for all the marbles.
Dude, I know you, damn it. And I know that you've been setting us up to just hit us with a little dinker on the end. So I'm staying.
Staying
This isn't an over. The rest of them were over. I'm fucking staying.
You're staying at 7.
You're trying to lowball us and just dinker us. I know.
You're staying at 7.
Staying at 7.
Adam, what was yours again?
9.
9? Gentlemen, like I was saying, it has been a fair and honest fight. We've seen an early lead, when we've seen a comeback. Maybe one for the ages even on the show, in the 2 episodes we've done this segment.
Let's go. I'm sending you home.
Jesus Christ.
It's Jason.
In the base game of Fallout 3, there are 16 joinable and non-joinable factions.
You did it.
That means that Adam got the drink in him going back to back. Going back to back. That is a Drake reference, and I'm not really a Drake fan. I'm actually surprised I kind of pulled that out. I didn't think I know. But Adam is our champion for the week yet again. Mike, what's going on, man? I mean, do you guys got to go back to the drawing board with this one right now, or?
Nah, there's gonna be plenty more episodes. I have all the confidence in the world that lifetime I'll be up.
That I like that.
That's a true gambler mentality.
True, right? Very true. That's a fair outlook on it. Adam, how are you feeling now after another win that you pulled out here on the Game Pass Gamecast?
I feel like my answers were so far off on that last one.
Hey, it doesn't matter. It almost, in a sense, you almost prices righted them. Almost, a little bit. It's like reverse prices right, though.
Almost. I feel like if I were trying to lose that game, I would have done better.
Yeah. How about this here? Obviously this one doesn't count, but are you guys interested in the tiebreaker one? Just to see what it was?
Yeah, let's hear the question.
Yeah.
Alright, in the base game of Fallout 3, same deal, vanilla Fallout that you bought in 2008, there are 6 religions within the game. What would you guys have guessed?
Is this the one where you finally dinker us? Is this the one where you finally dinker us?
What would your answers be?
Honestly, I would have thought it was a lower number than 6, but if that's the baseline and we can only hit from there, I'd have to stay at 6. I can't even think of more than the Children of Adam.
What about you, Mike?
I almost want to go negative. It's not an option, but I almost want to go to 4. But for the sake of the show, and since Adam went 6, I'm hitting to 9. 6969. You know what it is back at home. 6969. I'm hitting to 9.
In the base game of Fallout 3, there are 7 religions within the game.
Dude.
So
I have this written down.
I don't have it right in front of me, but I did guarantee there were 7 of them. There were 7 of them. I almost put that one as there are 7 religions within the game as the question. I almost pulled the old banana in the tailpipe.
Wow, I'm looking at Gamepedia right now, and you're right. I remember some of these.
I told you, I'm not just making it up. Well, this week's champion is the one, the only Adam Marshy Marsh, and I'm sure Mike will have tons of opportunities moving forward, because it seems like Gamecast Casino is going to be a staple in this. I always like making up these questions for it. Some of them are kind of hard to do, especially with big games like this, but I really enjoy this segment.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. I think Mike has just played an away game. I feel like I had a bit of a home field advantage on Fallout, even though I missed by a wide margin on most shots. They're going to be games where he'll have the home field advantage.
I was playing an away game, that's for sure.
Fair enough. All right, moving into our last segment here as we wrap up the show. As always, we're going to play Cash It, Pass It, or Ass It. If you don't know what this segment is, it's wherever we kind of go through and just give our final thoughts on the game, and do we think you should cash the game, aka spend your cold hard cash to just own the game, pass it, as in just download it via the Xbox Game Pass subscription, or ass it, don't buy this game at all, it's not worth your time. So basically, a play on buy it, rent it, or don't buy it. I'll start myself just as probably the least versed out of the 3 of us in terms of Fallout. I would suggest this game in particular, if you're going to own a Fallout game, it is this one. I say cash this one. It's similar to the back catalog of Gears of War's games. You can get them for next to nothing for the most part. I'm sure you can get it I'm pretty sure you can get the Game of the Year edition still at Walmart of this game for like $10 at the very most, and you're getting all the DLC and whatnot. This game is still, in my opinion, an absolute pleasure to play through. It holds up in 2019. Personally, I think most Bethesda games do. I still enjoy this game going back and playing it, and maybe nostalgia does play into that a little bit, but critically, if I'm looking at this game, the story still holds up. The mechanics of the game are still excellent. The open world that you're in, crumbled Washington, D.C., I think this game is awesome. And I think if you own an Xbox, on backwards compatible, it's outside of really, well, even the PC version of this is very hard to play, especially with the technical issues just starting up the game you have with the PC version that's available on Steam. Either you have an Xbox One or Xbox One X, I totally suggest just cashing this one and buying it and playing it through backwards compatibility. Adam, what do you think?
I can definitely attest to the problems on PC. To even get it running on Steam, you have to disable games for Windows Live interface, which was kind of a nightmare. So, but that being said, I would still definitely cache this game. It's a well that I return to frequently, and if I didn't love mods so much, I would definitely say that console versions are preferable, only because I feel like you get more ease of access, more stability. Whereas with the PC, more customization if that's your thing, especially with mods. But, I mean, you have to put in more work up front just to get it running. Either way you go, I think this is a game that you want to cache. In fact, there's 2 DLC that I either don't remember or don't think I've even played yet in Fallout 3. So it's got a lot of lasting power.
Absolutely. Mike, what are you saying, man?
I mean, I agree with the sentiment of Marshy. If you're caching it, it's got to be the Xbox version. It's just too much of a hassle on PC. At the very least, definitely a pass. This is not an asset game. So, I mean, for me, I think it's I mean, I don't know. See, my thing with the cash it, pass it bit is are they ever going to pull this game off of Game Pass? And if they were to pull this game off of Game Pass, is it something that you would want to revisit? And to me, it is. So it's a cash for me, because if they were ever to pull it off of Game Pass for whatever reason, if Bethesda and Xbox had a falling out or whatever, you still have the copy of the game and you can still go back and play it. Yeah. So it's a cash it to me.
Yeah, I can't ever see that happening. Those two companies are so in bed with each other. I mean, they are the one large third-party publisher and developer that always has exclusive deals with Xbox. You see the bundled consoles and hell, I bought my Xbox One X with the Fallout 76 bundle because it was $100 cheaper than the rest of them. Granted, that's because nobody wanted to buy the Fallout 76 one, but that's a different conversation. But yeah, shocker, this game is one that we all want to own, or all definitely recommend you playing. It's just a delight, and it still is in 2019. And if you're going to, in my opinion, play a Fallout game that is available on Game Pass at least, this is the one to do it. New Vegas isn't on Game Pass. I hope one day that changes, especially now with Obsidian being under Microsoft's umbrella and the Outer Worlds coming direct to Game Pass day and date. I hope that New Vegas finds its way on there soon, because I'd love to cover that game. That's the one I'm least familiar with outside of 76, but it would give me an excuse to dive back in and actually finish that game, because what I have played of it, I love it. But yeah, and with that is going to be our show for this week. Guys, tell everyone, where can they find you? Mike, where can people find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Toy Soldier. The second O is going to be an X. And on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier, and on Xbox Live at LL Toy Soldier LL.
Nice. Adam, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at AC_Marshy. That's AC_MARSH.
Nice. And as always, I am your host, Travis White, aka Travlis. You can find me on most internet platforms that way. Twitter, it's at Travlis_. Xbox Live is just regular Travlis, no underscore. And Twitch, I do stream from time to time. I keep saying that, I need to get back into that. And hopefully we can do some community streams coming up here soon. But you can find me at twitch.tv/Travlis_, TRAVLESS. And with that being said, that is our show for this week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following. And just thank you for being a part of this show. And with that being said, have a great day in gaming.